Julia is originally from Brazil and migrated to Canada in 2013. She was 30 years old. Being a software developer back in her country, she arrived in Canada alone to start a whole new life. In this interview, Julia shares that it doesn't matter if you already have a successful life in your own country. When you have that big desire of growing somewhere else, you just have to follow your dreams and go for it. Enjoy.
Hi everyone, this is Diana here, and I'm very happy today because not only I have a very successful immigrant with me, this is one of my dearest friends. She's Julia Perdigueiro, and I have to say that I saw her arrive to Canada since day one, and I've been able to see all her progress as an immigrant. So I thank you very much for being here today.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure. And yeah, for sure, you were there. My first job, you were there first day just to tell me that I was welcome, and it was very nice.
Yeah, it was. It was like for both of us because I was recently arrived at the same time. I believe I had only a few months before you arrived, so we were kind of sisters in the progress. So, but tell me a bit more about who you are. Why did you decide to move here to Canada, and all this?
Okay. So I'm originally from Brazil. I already had a career in Brazil as a software developer, as a software engineer. But I was looking into having new experiences. I was learning French already, so coming to Quebec specifically, I knew would help me a lot with learning more French. And I saw an opportunity with a job that could bring me here, which is not the most common way, at least to Canada. It's rather hard to find a job before you are already an immigrant. So I was very lucky in that sense, and the fact that I am a programmer helped me a lot in that sense. And I had good networking also. I guess one of my best friends was already working in Canada. He came as a permanent resident, and he kind of paved the way and helped me a lot. So I got this first job, and it was a nice job. It was with nice people. It was in my area. It was programming, but it was kind of a step back also in my career. When I left Brazil, I was a manager for a while, and I was tech lead for a long time before that and after that. And when I came back, it's as if I was nothing. I had to restart.
Mm-hmm.
Not only I had to restart it fully in, well, English and French. It was a very Quebecer office where meetings were held in French, and it was a big challenge, and I felt it immediately. Like, English was already something that I mastered, so when I arrived, I was not worried about that. But the fact that this was a French-speaking office, and I knew before I took the job, was a lot more challenging than I had even thought. So it was very tiring. It was it brings you doubts at times, because right away I knew that I had to understand in order to grow, and it's a big pressure that we put on ourselves to really succeed and prove not only ourselves but the company that they did the right choice by hiring us, right? So this was something that at first was a bit harder than I thought. I think I didn't think about it. I just like, okay, let's go, let's have a job, you know. And then I arrived, and every day I would get home and I was like, oh my God, I am so mentally exhausted from all this, like learning new
Right?
things.
Mm.
And because when you change jobs, you learn all new things, but also learning a new language and being immersed in a new language was very hard. I was very lucky to have such good friends around me, like you, Diana, and Marcelo, that helped me through on my lunch breaks, on my coffee breaks, and even back home, because Marcelo and I shared an apartment.
Mm-hmm.
So that was very helpful, because migrating completely by yourself like you did is such a big big accomplishment, and I don't think I could have done it. And I always admired you so much for
Oh
having
my
done
God,
it.
no, don't say that, Julia. We have all our things, you know, like even for example, the things that you achieved, the way that you set yourself, and it was you were so resilient and adaptable to the ways that the things managed here, because they were so different. And I remember those times at the coffee place, talking about the differences between the ways that the people work here as a team and how they work in Brazil. Like the adaptability that you got in that moment, I believe that's also very what's the word, admirable.
Thank you.
So, and at the same time you were talking about how kind of difficult it was to go inside of meetings where were carried out in French, and you were already understanding it, but not, I remember that you were not being like brave enough, or you were being super shy to go and jump and start just more or less documenting in French.
At first, even understanding was a challenge, because not only it was French, Quebecer French has a very specific accent to it that I wasn't used to hearing it. I had French classes with like standard French, like Parisian French. And then I arrive here and there's all these new sounds that they use, and all these new words and cutting words short. And it was really intense. So for a while, I didn't even fully understand everything that was happening. And then I started understanding, but like, I can't answer in French yet. French is such a hard language to master. And I'm very much of I'm a detail-oriented person. I really want things to be right. And if I don't know how to say it perfectly, sometimes I don't want to say it. So it was really hard. And I started expressing myself a lot more in English, and got used to expressing myself a lot more in English at work, which I know it wasn't the best first impression either. I wish I was able to speak more French back then, but it was really, really hard. Eventually, so after a couple of years, I became able to express myself in French, and all of this due to being there with meetings in French. And I met a Quebecer boyfriend as well, who has a French-speaking family. So family lunches and dinners really, really helped with developing my French skills, and going to the supermarket and going to the doctor and going to the dentist and everything in French around me really, really helped. But at first you don't even have that experience. And it was really important, not only to me, but for the company as well, that I was able to master French. So that was quite a challenge.
It was. I remember you a bit like mortified with that, but at the same time, I believe you had the ability of showing others in this company a little bit more about diversity, because you showed yourself as you were, and you explained why you were speaking in English. And maybe, of course, at the beginning they were not liking it very much, but at the same time they had to develop a little bit of patience. And they learned to appreciate it. Because it was a very nice environment, that one in the company.
Nice people, for sure.
They were. So I believe at the same time you opened their eyes in a way that they know that technology is all about international situations. All technology is built in English, and the world of technology is like business language, is everything in English. So for them, it was also very good practice of, if they wanted something else in their lives, like to go to work on Warner Brothers or Fox or Ubisoft or wherever in the world, they will need to speak English at the same time. So I believe it was a double win-win there.
Yeah, and I think we failed to mention it, and now you talked about gaming companies, to say specifically that I work in video games, that the first job that I had was not fully video games, like commercial video games. It was more of a niche video game area, but I have since moved on to work on a lot of mobile games that are out on Android and iOS. And I've established myself as a game developer, and for sure, all the companies I've worked ever since, and all the companies I've talked to ever since, you have to have your English. It's very important. It's the universal language, and it's the language in which most video games get published as well. But it does help that you have the French. I do feel like some people, being in Montreal and Quebec, some people that have worked with me that only speak English end up missing out on some opportunities, on some networking. And I feel that the local people, and even the French people, because there's lots and lots of French people that are working in the industry in Montreal, that they value a lot more people who can speak French. So everyone that I know that have just arrived and it's like, oh, I don't have French yet, I do encourage them, do learn French, even if it's not going to be perfect and professional, like completely professional. Learn French. It's good, and you feel more integrated, and you feel more valued, for sure.
I believe it's every tool that you can get before arriving to the new country, get it, go get it, because it's not only about the language, it's the knowledge of, for example, the industry that you're going to be working at, or the kind of values of the companies that you're going to be related to, the neighborhood, the city that you're going to work, that you're going to live in, because it's not the same to live, for example, in a big city like Montreal than, I don't know, somewhere in Sweden, in a very small town. So the more tools that we can get when we arrive to another country is the better.
For sure. And the language is very important.
Yeah, of course, the language is very important. And how have you managed, for example, the distance? I know that your sister is somewhere in the world, your mom is somewhere in the world, your dad. How do you manage all this?
Yeah, that was one of my biggest concerns when I decided to move. And if you had asked me a couple years before I actually moved out of Brazil, if I was ever going to do that, I would have said, you're crazy. I could never leave my family behind. It's still something that hurts, because life goes on, like one of my sisters had kids, and I wasn't there when my grandma passed away last year. So that's really, really hard, but it's a choice that I made willingly. And to be honest, it wasn't a permanent choice at first. I really thought I was going to go back because of being so attached to my family. I thought this was going to be, oh, I'm going to go and I'm going to have an experience and it's going to be amazing. And then I'm going to come back and resume my life, kind of thing, And life is not predictable like that. So when I arrived and I managed to make very good friends, and I managed to have a very good career that I couldn't have other ways in Brazil, like in games. It's a very hard market in Brazil right now. And Montreal is the best place in the world, in my opinion, to do video games. So I met my boyfriend, and his family took me in as his own family. And personally that I made so many friends that whenever I have a birthday party, my house is full. Even when I was living in a tiny apartment, we just filled up the apartment with all my friends, because I couldn't help myself. I met so many good people that, and this is also one of the things that I think are very, very important for when you move. And it doesn't even matter if you're moving inside your country to a new city, you have to have roots. You have to know people around you. You have to have people that are there for you, that if ever you're in trouble, you call them and they're there at your door to hold you and hold your hand and get you through it. Definitely. And you cannot do it alone, whether it's your own blood family or if it's your chosen family. Like I feel like I have a chosen family here with some of my close friends, that doing it alone is so much harder. And I don't think anyone can do it for a long, long time. So really establishing your roots somewhere really helps. And now I can't see myself living all of the things that I have accomplished here anymore.
Yeah, yeah,
So
definitely.
if I go back home, I would be missing these people here. So I'd rather
Yeah.
just go on vacation.
And I believe it would be harder to go back to your country because you've built not only this beautiful network and supporting network that actually welcomed you as they were your family at the same time. You were a sister. I see your friends when we go to your birthday parties, and they all are about like, well, and even they welcome others as well. Like they don't know
Yeah.
others, and you arrive and they say, hey, hello, where are you coming from, and blah. So
Yes, and they're all immigrants, most of them.
maybe that's why. Maybe this is the thing that I don't know if you agree with me, but not even, for example, it wasn't my purpose when I arrived to Canada to find other immigrant friends.
Mm-hmm.
I actually wanted to stabilize myself and actually live the experience of living with real Canadians and try to not to become a Canadian, of course not, but to learn more about how to be one of the this
locals.
group.
Yeah.
But at the end, we end up, I don't know, I ended up being friends with a lot of immigrants who are not exactly Mexicans. I actually just have 3 friends from Mexico, but all the others are from other parts of the world and also immigrants. So is this something common? Are we actually looking unconsciously for other immigrants?
I think that's normal. And the more I meet people from not necessarily the exact same background as me, but similar. So like we're Latinas, we recognize a lot of our each other's culture in the other, and we learn also about the differences. And that's so enriching, and we recognize the value of sticking around people like that. Also something that I see happening sometimes is that you meet someone who is from the same country as you, and I feel like some immigrants feel obligated to hang out with them just because they are from the same country, and that doesn't necessarily mean that they're the best company for you, because they're not. Maybe if you were back home, you wouldn't be friends with them, you know?
Yeah.
So I try not to do that, and I try to see how other cultures also relate to mine. So I found that French people have a lot in common with Brazilian people. I found that Mexican people have a lot in common, and Venezuelan people have a lot in common. And that's so nice, and I get to learn so much about their cultures as well. I feel like visiting their countries all the time, and I feel like they want to visit my country too, and we can exchange all this precious thing. I get to practice my Spanish when I hang out with the Mexicans.
Yeah.
And the locals, and here in Montreal specifically, I feel like a lot of the locals, they already have their own networks, their own friends, their own family, and they're not always open to being friends with newcomers. That's not a rule. It's not that everyone's like that, but it happens a lot, especially when I'm used to making friends at the office, because in Brazil, everyone becomes best friends with their work buddies because we're there all the time. And here, sometimes you meet someone at the office and they're very nice to you at the office and you have coffee together, but then you go back home and it's bye, you know, never saw you and don't know you, and they go back to their families and their neighbors and the friends that they've had for the longest time. I got lucky, I guess, from hearing all of the other experiences. Some people have a hard time finding local friends. I have quite a few local friends that I hang out with all the time, that I talk on a very deep personal level. But then again, I'm in video games, and in video games, people are very nice. Like overall, it's such a friendly, open-minded. Montreal video game development community is such an open-minded community, and I've been very lucky to find these people around me too.
That's awesome. That's awesome, because I believe the bad moments and the hard moments and the challenging moments are better gone through when you have this network.
Mhm.
And I believe that you've been able to build it very well
Mhm.
in all these years.
Yes.
So talking about all these kind of challenges, is there something that has been very, very difficult to you that you've been like that you thought in a certain way, what the hell am I doing here?
Well, I make friends very easily. Because of that, I think I felt more comfortable and more at home very fast. But something that I struggled with for a while, and now I got better at it because I found ways to replace it, is missing the food. That was something that was really, really hard at first, especially because Brazilian food is not such a popular worldwide food that you can go on the corner and find a restaurant like you can do with Thai and Japanese and Chinese and even Mexican food. That is probably not perfect, but it's something that kind of brings you back home, you know, like it can help you. Brazilian food is very specific. So I've learned how to cope. I've learned how to replace some ingredients and work it out.
Yeah.
I learned how to where to find some of the ingredients, but they're really far away, and that's something that I don't have a car. I haven't had a car since I moved here over 5 years ago. So it makes moving around sometimes harder. Though, like taking public transportation is very good, and one of the reasons I moved to Montreal. But if I just want to buy, you know, like specific beans and a specific type of cheese, I don't want to be 15 minutes on a bus and then 15 minutes to come back. It's a way too long. But, you know, Canadian food is also very good. And I'm very lucky to be in a city. Well, I chose it for it as well, that I can find all different kinds of cuisines. I can go downtown. There's so many different restaurants that I can choose from. But the Brazilian food specifically, it's still something that I miss. And that every time someone comes to visit, whether it's family or friends, and I invite them to stay over because that's how Brazilians do it. We you know, we go visit someone abroad, and we stay at their places as if we're family. I just have them bringing some ingredients, like, oh, so this one you're allowed to bring on your bag, you're gonna bring that one to me, and that's like your thank you gift for staying at my place. You're bringing me food.
That's great. And for example, well, you talked about the food, so I believe that's not, after all, that's a very nice challenge to be living with, because fortunately you're not in, any kind of difficulty happened since you arrived. Everything has been super smooth, and actually everything has been ramping up.
Yes,
quite fast, right?
Yeah, so I've been here less than 6 years, and I've bought my own place with my boyfriend. Of course, I didn't do it alone. We're now expecting our first child.
Yay!
And I'm permanent resident. I'm on my way to becoming a citizen eventually. So yes, things worked out very fine. My career, even though I had to take a step back when I first arrived, has picked up after a couple of years, after about 2.5 years. I managed to get into a leadership position again. And now I'm very well established, and I couldn't be happier. That's for sure.
Do you what do you believe is the key to all that very good ramping up?
So I think taking care of yourself mentally and physically is a very good starting point, because you don't have a lot of control over how people perceive you, and you don't have total control over how you're doing at work. Like, you do your best and you put your best foot forward, and you try to show how capable you are of doing your job. But in the end, you still have bosses who get to decide on your future, on how your career develops, and you have luck and chance happening all the time. But if you don't pay attention to yourself, if you don't make yourself healthy mentally and physically, it's going to be such a huge struggle to succeed on all of this. So whatever works for you to make you feel good, I think you should invest on that. That is not wasted money at all. That's very important. That you, if you like meditating, meditate. If you like exercising, exercise. If you need therapy, please go to therapy. If for me, my therapy is being around my friends, and I have this religious almost setting that every Sunday I meet some of my best friends for brunch, and wherever maybe they come over here and I cook for them, maybe we go elsewhere and we eat. And even if we go to very crappy restaurants, because brunch can be quite expensive, but we're together and we're talking about how we feel and how our week was and our struggles at work and at school for the ones who were studying at the time. And that just gets you through the week, and then you get to the next weekend and you find your friends again and you keep going, because doing it alone and not paying attention to how your mind is working, it's a recipe for disaster, in my opinion.
Definitely, definitely. And did you have any kind of plan? Were you able to do, once you arrived here to Canada, were you able to plan your life ahead, or has it been happening a kind of bit organically?
It was kind of organic, because when I moved to Montreal the week I turned 30. Even though I was planning it before and getting all my papers done, literally I turned 30 on a Wednesday. On Saturday, I was arriving in Montreal. So, you know how you grow up and you think like, oh, by the time I'm 30, I'm going to be married, I'm going to have kids, and I'm going to have a house and a car, and I'm going to travel to Europe, you know? That didn't happen. So as my life progressed, after I was like 25 or something, I was like, you know, planning that much doesn't really work. So I'm just going to invest on myself, you know, like I want to be better at this. So I'll study and I'll get better at this. I want to get this promotion. So I'll work hard and I'll get this promotion. And when I got here, I thought to myself, well, I'm going to take it one step at a time. I came into video games by chance, but I'm going to be the best video game developer I can. I'm going to learn about video game design, and I'm going to learn how to you know, deal with the artists and the programmers and the designers, and I'm gonna make the best out of this, and I'm gonna master my French. Those were my goals. I'm gonna be better at French, and I'm gonna be better at game development, and those paid off. My career just took off from there, just from me putting the effort into doing the things that I was doing better. So right now, we've been planning for a while to have a baby. So that's the accomplishment of our plan, that the baby will be coming. and literally, I don't want to make so many plans that I will feel disappointed. I'm just waiting for the baby to come out and tell me what they need, and we'll take it from there. But it's good to have some short-term goals, like I'm going to master the language, I'm going to get this better job, I'm going to, you know, get a better salary, I'm going to learn this, I'm going to buy property, and you put those goals, and as you accomplish them, you feel good about yourself, you feel like you're moving forward, that's for sure. But I also would be careful about not making plans that you have zero control over, and it's just going to feel very disappointing if you don't make it fully.
Yeah, of course, of course. When do you believe that you would tell yourself that moment when you arrived to Canada for the first time? Now?
I don't know. I was very lucky, you know. I had it so easy that I think it's even a bit unfair to say like, oh, I should have done this differently, because it all worked out so well. But maybe I would tell myself, learn French a bit faster. It's going to be useful, especially when I first arrived, that I didn't have that many responsibilities. My job was a lot easier than it is now. but I didn't invest as much as I could have. So even today, I have a hard time writing in French, which I wish I was better at. So I would probably tell myself to invest a bit more time in learning French.
Well, that's something that you can do whenever you're ready. Maybe when you're going to be on maternity leave, you can start reading some literature in French, or I don't know, writing love letters to Alex or something like that. Anyway, is there a, well, you already had a few and super good advices to everybody, but is there something, like one only thing that you believe that is the most important for us immigrants to focus on?
Well, to listen to yourself. I think sometimes also changing your mind shouldn't be a problem, whether it's about you got a job and now you realize you don't really like that job, or you moved somewhere and you realize you don't really like the place, or you're struggling with the weather or the people or whatever it is. There's no shame in rethinking and replanning. I think life is already super hard, and no plan should be etched in stone. And if you change your mind, by all means change your mind and try something new. You already did something so huge, that is moving outside of your country. Why do you have to punish yourself for making that decision? Maybe it's just about moving neighborhoods, maybe it's about moving cities, but maybe it's about moving countries again. And it's such a hard thing to do, and it takes a lot of effort and money. But just because you already invested in a change, I wouldn't insist on keeping up with that change if you feel like that wasn't the right choice for you. Mm-hmm. And I've seen immigrants that went back home, or immigrants that went elsewhere after a while, and that's totally fine. That's no failure at all. Even my mom, when I was boarding my plane, my mom turned to me and she said, I know I don't have to tell you that, but I want to tell you that if you don't feel good, if you feel like you made a wrong decision, just come back home. We're here for you. And I know a lot of people don't have the privilege of having a support system like that, but insisting in bad choices is not a good way to lead life. And even if that choice that you made is good for someone else, it doesn't mean it's good for you. And I would also say, if you have the opportunity to go somewhere on vacation before you move there, go somewhere on vacation before you move there. You can learn a lot about how life is going to be just by being there a couple of weeks and trying it out. Just walk around, see how you feel. Do you feel at home? Because feeling like you're on vacation 100% of the time when you're living somewhere, it just feels so awkward and out of place. When I first arrived in Montreal, I felt like I was living in a hotel, and this was like a conference thing that I was attending for a few days. And it took me like a month or two to really feel like, okay, no, this is my life now. This is what I'm doing. But it felt so weird initially that, like, that is something that is going to change again at some point. I'm just going to go back. And it feels that everything's temporary, and you don't want to make decisions. You don't want to, I'm not going to go to the gym because what if I don't stay? I'm not going to buy this furniture because what if I don't stay? But it's important to feel at home. And if you don't feel at home, rethink it and maybe go elsewhere.
Yeah. I believe that last advice is super rich, because there's a lot of people forcing themselves to stay and to achieve, and living in this kind of thought that if we go back to our country, we're going to be failures.
Not at all.
Losers.
Not at all.
That, oh my God, I didn't achieve it. I told to everybody that I was going to live another life, another experience. My life was going to be wonderful. And now I'm going back. And I believe this is something that happens a lot more than we think.
Yes,
because first years being an immigrant, I believe those are the biggest and the most critical years, where
they
you
are.
are not only learning about that new country, but learning about yourself, and you're discovering about yourself and your capacity and ability to adapt, to be resilient, to learn more. So thank you
Yes,
so much for that advice, because this is taking a lot of heavy stones of a lot of people
for
shoulders.
sure, for sure. And moving elsewhere makes you learn a lot about yourself.
Yeah,
So listen to yourself and react accordingly.
definitely. Well, Julia, thank you so much for this interview. I really appreciated your time and all the things that you shared with us. I really hope that your life is going to continue being as wonderful and successful as it has been. I can't wait to see you in person, to hug you, and congratulate you for your baby who's coming. So thank you so much for sharing today, and see you later.
Thank you, and thank you for all your great work. I'm sure that a lot of people that are already immigrants or thinking about immigrating, taking all your good advices into consideration, and you can change lives, and that's great.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.